Three,
two,
1.
Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 11.46, the black light of a dark star. We are back. Hello, Daniel.
I had a fun story to tell, but I'm going to try and rush through it because there are 15 goddamn pages of this fucking chapter.
Everyone...
Wednesday!
The people who read cheer, but the person who has to voice it cries. It's like you're like the Marine.
I really am. But I had a funny story. I was in the car with my friend, right?
Yeah.
And he was talking about in fantasy. He's like, how come... he's like, in D&D, a variant human can take a feat. Why don't they just take Magic Initiate, because that lets you learn one spell, learn Magic Missile, and just make sure all the city guard know it, so that when someone walks in, you have 30 guards just pelting them with Magic Missile, and they're instantly down. And I was like, well, all that person needs is shield. And he was like, oh, they'll just wait to cast them. Like, then he has time to get in. They're like, then they'll use their bows. And I was like, no, because they have to switch the weapon. He's like, dropping their magic implement is a free action. They can take the bow out. And I'm like, okay, sure. But also, humans... you need 13 intellect to take Magic Initiate, which isn't the average thing. And he was like, man, fuck you. This is a world where everyone can learn magic and have Magic Missile. And I was like, if everyone has Magic Missile in the guard and they don't like their ruler, they would just kill the ruler and take over.
Wouldn't the
and he's
person
like,
coming
exactly.
in also have magic?
Yeah, and I said, exactly. And I said, you know what you've created? You've created America, where everyone's got goddamn Magic Missile. It's like, I bear the right to use Magic Missile if anyone comes into my home.
The only person who can stop an evil wizard with Magic Missile is a good wizard.
Missile's a good wizard with Magic Missile! Exactly! You just created America. And that's not why we play fantasy games. Just every human running around like, does he still have a spell left for the day? Is this guy gonna Magic Missile?
This guy's gonna reload.
Because for reference, the average person, like a normal commoner, has like 4 HP. I think a town guard has like 8. And Magic Missile is 3d4 of damage that can't be blocked.
Instant kill.
Yeah, so it's just everyone's running around with the ability to kill one person a day. Oh my god. Anyway, I just thought that was really funny and I wanted to share it. But that's not what you're here for. Thank you. You're here for Aetheral Space 11.46, the black light of a dark star.
Hell yeah.
Ascendant General Alexandrius Toll frowned deeply, his eyes narrowing to golden pinpricks as he took in the sight before him. The Supreme, dead. The Supreme, with his head resting on the ground before him, severed by a single clean blow. The Supreme, proven false. That is what would be said now, even if nobody truly believed it. Far behind him, a wall of flame towered up to the sky as the incoming ships continued their incineration of the Regiment Red base. The fools! No doubt the captain of the Rashomon had ordered them to do so, but they risked destroying this vital scene in the process. This was a shard of history they were almost burning. At least they'd managed to subdue that metal monstrosity, if nothing else. With a steady hand, Toll reached out and closed Cadman's staring eyes. At the very least, he was smiling at the end. He looked happy. That was the kind of expression Alexandrius hadn't seen in a long time. Not since the final battle against the Kingdom Moon Cult. Hold on, how old was the Supreme during that?
That was sort of like soon after coming into the actual Supreme role.
Because he's like 8, he was like 80 now, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's like 60 years ago. How old is Toll? Because he's a Pugnant.
Some Pugnants have longer lifespans, so he's sort of survived since then.
He's so elderly. It seemed the man... Was he like the same age as the Supreme?
Yeah.
It seemed the man above all had found a worthy adversary at the end. Speaking of which, Toll turned his head to look at the ruined corpse of Cadman's counterpart. The corpse of Zachariah Esmeralda was in a much worse state, burnt and shattered and dismembered. I assume charred.
Yeah.
To such a degree that he looked like a chunk of used firewood. He was smiling too, though. It was strange to think about. This man surely must have passed after Cadman, so by all rights, he had been Supreme for at least a minute or two. They'd lost 2 Supremes in one day, then. The line of succession was now unclear. Without a doubt, there would be a dawn contest, just like last time. Those injuries of Esmeralda's, a dark and false corner of his mind whispered. They could have been caused by Sevenfold Serpent's inferno. You could say you came and finished him off. You could be Supreme. Tull banished the notion immediately. Such a falsehood would bring shame to the entire supremacy, not just himself. It was not something that could even be considered. So instead, he brought a finger to his ear and activated the communicator there. "Hazard," he said gruffly, "send word to Azum-Ha." That's the capital planet, right?
Yeah.
So much mucus in my throat, god damn it. He had to take a deep breath before he could continue, before he could speak those necessary words. "The false supreme has perished." Ruth Blaine could still feel her legs. They were gone without a doubt, leaving her in a wheelchair for the time being. But if she closed her eyes, she could feel pain sculpted into their shapes. The sensation of their loss was almost like a replacement for their being, cold ghosts stabbing her in retaliation. But when she winced, when she gasped, when she acknowledged that pain, she couldn't help but feel an accompanying pang of guilt. After all, she hadn't even gotten the worst of it. Dragon Hadrian lay on the bed before her and Bruno, wires and tubes connected to him from every angle. Enough bandages covered his form that you wouldn't have been able to tell his identity without knowing in advance. One arm was missing, one leg, one eye too, and so much more. The doctors had explained it in great detail, perhaps far too much detail. And so words and phrases, divorced of context, could do nothing but swirl around in Ruth's head. Stomach, lung, kidney, vocal cords, facial bones, facial muscles, an eye, hip bones, so much more. Still tallying up the list, possible neural issues. In short, it was a wonder that Dragon Hadrian was alive. He'd recorded so much of his body into Gemini World just to keep moving. And when his fatigue had finally caught up to him, he hadn't had time to deactivate the ability. Every damaged part he'd banished away had just vanished into the void, leaving him like this. Bruno's mouth moved silently for a moment before he could finally force speech through it. Wait a minute, I just realized, if he can record and manifest things, right, like body parts, he could make organ transplants so easy for himself. Just steal someone else's organs with compatible blood type. These are my vocal cords now.
It would have to be like someone who's not an AIF user, or at least a weaker AIF user, because wires infusion would sort of prevent that.
There's plenty of non-Aether users.
So, vampire?
In this galaxy. Vampire Dragon? This is Bruno talking, right?
Yeah.
"Do you think you'll wake up?" he asked, voice hollow as the voice hollow as the body before him. Sorry. Ruth swallowed. "They don't know. They're not sure, I guess." "But do you think he'll wake up?" Bruno asked again. There was a strange tone to his voice, a strange pleading note. It was like Ruth was the one who'd decide if he woke up, like he had to beg her to make it so. But she was in the same ship?
Yeah.
But she was in the same ship as him. All she could do was watch with tired eyes. "I guess," Ruth repeated. What else could she say? The two of them remained there for a long time, looking down at Dragon's ruined body, listening to the beep of his assisted heartbeat and the of his assisted breathing. The doctors had said he was stable at least. So long as he was hooked up to this machinery, this room of machinery, he was stable. What a joke. Tears rose to Ruth's eyes once more. He's like Roswell, remember? In the room.
Oh, yeah. But it's probably worse.
She's done a lot of crying over the last few hours.
He gets up, he's like, "Bruno, you really have been a good friend."
She had started to think she'd run out of tears. It seemed not. "Hey," Serena said soothingly, crouching down next to the wheelchair. "Don't cry, Miss Ruth. It's not your fault." Ruth thumped a fist against her leg once, twice, each time accompanied by a face flashing through her mind. Skipper, Dragon, one gone, the other very nearly so. Her fault? What did it matter if it was her fault? It had still happened. Skipper, his face returned, lingered. They didn't even have a body. No doubt it had burnt away to nothing in the bombardment of Elysian fields. Ruth spoke, her throat dry. "I thought I had all of this figured out, you know." "What do you mean?" Serena blinked. Ruth shrugged weakly. I don't know what I'm talking about. I thought I understood what I needed to do. What I was here for." She looked up at Serena, and glistening tears streamed down her face. Her teeth clenched to restrain another sob. "I thought I was strong. I thought I was strong enough to stop things like this from happening. I thought I didn't have to worry anymore, think anymore. I'm so stupid. What was I thinking? I wasn't thinking. I'm so It was clear to anyone watching that Ruth was about to spiral, blame driving her deeper and deeper into despair with each revolution. Serena had experienced something similar in the past, back on the cradle, and her friend had been there to pull her back. So she owed her one. Serena knelt down, embracing Ruth and cutting off her distraught mutterings. "Get off me," Ruth whispered, shaking like a leaf. "I don't deserve it." "You didn't do anything wrong, Miss Ruth," Serena said firmly. "You didn't. So don't talk about yourself like that." "But don't," Serena repeated, pulling her in tighter. "I'm sad too, Miss Ruth, but that's all it is. Don't blame yourself." Beep, beep, beep. The room remained mercilessly still and mercilessly quiet as the two of them hugged each other tight. Quiet, quiet. All the way until the moment they were called away, and finally had to leave Dragon Hadrian to his long slumber. A slumber that showed no signs of ending. Hang on, I'm just getting my mucus out.
No problem. He has to go to his room of machinery to get the mucus out.
Dragon Hadrian thought that he would quite like to be a star. The only one who decides what happens to me is me. I'll show you that people can be good, that they're not what you think of them. Who's this one talking?
The first one would have been... These are all sort of like contextless, but the first one was a quote from Ruth back in Arc 1.
And this long speech, was that Dragon?
That was Dragon in Arc 3, yeah.
You really don't understand anything, do you? Of course people are vulgar. They live in a vulgar, awful world. There's no choice in the matter. But there's nobody in the world equipped to make decisions. Not really. You think the people on top got there for being wiser, more advanced, more worthy than everyone else? Of course not. They got there by being vulgar on a big scale rather than a little one. They're just the people who could bring themselves to be the most awful. It's the same everywhere. There's no deeper meaning to any of it. Can you make this stick for me, kid? A single eye opened, nearly sightless, and a shredded mouth took a shallow breath. Gemini world. So, Bruno said, crossing his arms, what happens now? The three of them, Bruno, Ruth, and the widow, sat in the captain's quarters of the ship, the Vertigo. Apparently, the captain had disappeared shortly after the evacuation, and so the widow had taken official command over the vessel. The running theory, according to this woman, was that the captain had stolen one of the escape pods and ran for it to avoid any supremacy retaliation. But Bruno didn't buy that for a second. He'd worked for the UAP before, after all, running Black Ops as part of the SED. He knew how these things worked. Now? The widow asked, fingers steepled on the captain's desk before her. Well, I suppose that mostly depends on you. What would you like to happen now? Bruno glared. I find it hard to believe you'd spend all this effort getting us out of there just to let us do whatever we want. Well, the widow smiled thinly. I'd say you're a very distrusting person, then. The fact that you escaped Elysian Fields is the important part. Any number of things can happen now, and it's all the same to us. He narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? The widow clicked a long, bony finger against the metal surface of the desk before... You? What?
Oh, before her, sorry.
I was like,
I now reveal that someone's narrating
I'm
it.
talking to you, viewer.
I now reveal it's secretly in second person.
If you, Esmeralda's comrades, were all killed on Elysian Fields along with them, the story ends there. Even though the Supreme was killed, his murderers were all destroyed as well. It doesn't serve as a very effective statement. Basically, what it implies is that defying the supremacy is only possible through total sacrifice. And that's not the message you want to send. Precisely, the widow nodded. Now that you've escaped, and the supremacy is forced to acknowledge that, it doesn't matter as much what becomes of you. If a special officer was to find you tomorrow and kill you, it would be very easy to dismiss news of your death as desperate propaganda. The stage has been set for that sort of thing. Bruno made a noise so humorless it couldn't honestly be described as laughter. And that works well for your propaganda, huh? The widow nodded again, shamelessly. That's right. Outside, Ruth could see another ship drifting alongside theirs, one of the few that still remained part of this ramshackle fleet. As they traveled, more and more ships had broken off to act as decoys for pursuers, or to transport survivors to other prearranged locations. Now it was just these two, the Vertigo and the Sky High. No doubt the Sky High would move off at some point as well, leaving them alone. Bruno leaned back in his chair, suspicious eyes scanning the widow's face for any signs of deceit. Ideally, in an ideal situation for you, what would we decide to do? You'd come with us back to Serendipity, the widow replied without hesitation. From there, we could arrange all sorts of other things. Like what? I'm not the one who would be making those decisions, she said. So I can't say. Would those decisions be bad for us? Bruno demanded. The widow took a moment to consider the question, her finger sliding across the metal desk and clearing a line of dust. It rather depends on how you'd classify bad, she finally answered. You wouldn't be injured or killed if that's your concern, but you would be put under a spotlight. If you think that's bad for you, that's your business, but it's a natural consequence of continuing Skipper's work. I'll pretend you didn't bring my dead friend into it, Bruno said with a clear and steady voice. But by continuing his work, you mean continuing his personal war against the supremacy, right? The widow nodded. I would think that's a given. As you say, we didn't rescue you out of the goodness of our hearts. Maybe we've had enough fighting, Bruno said quietly, suddenly very tired. Maybe we think we deserve a rest. That thin smile faded, and the widow raised an unamused eyebrow. Ruth shivered, and she found that the air in the room was suddenly growing very cold. She frowned. Had someone turned up the air conditioning or something? We're not asking you to do all of this out of the good of your hearts, either, the widow said, her own voice just as frosty. We can offer a great deal of compensation for your cooperation. The supremacy may strike back at you. We can provide the protection of members of the Ten Nebula. If comfort is what you're looking for, that too can be facilitated. Her eyes flicked over to Ruth. You've suffered injuries as a result of your heroics. We can arrange specialized treatment, the most advanced prosthetics. Bruno took a deep breath before glancing towards Ruth. What do you think? Ruth didn't answer. She was still staring out the window at the sky high floating alongside them. Ruth? Bruno asked again. What? Ruth snapped her head back towards the conversation, suddenly pulled out of her haze of consciousness. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. What were we? Serena smiled with Bruno's mouth. Don't worry about it, Miss Ruth, she said, before Bruno reasserted himself and turned back towards the widow. Sorry for all the stuttering, my God.
Yes, it's because you're so sad.
It's because of work. I'm exhausted. Who's talking?
Bruno.
Sorry. This is a big decision to be making on the spur of the moment. I wouldn't say it's the spur of the moment, given the amount of time we've already been in transit, the widow frowned. But if you need more time, that can be arranged. It's a long way to Serendipity, after all. Bruno's eyes flicked back over to Ruth, who was already spacing out again, before they returned to the widow. He took a deep breath before speaking. How about this? He proposed. The ship is going to have to refuel soon, isn't it? I'm sure you're prepared for that. Get Ruth some prosthetics while we're waiting at the light point, and before we leave, we'll have your answer. The widow considered Bruno's proposal for a good long moment, and... That's acceptable, she finally said. But the prosthetics we can get hold of on short notice will only be rudimentary. Something more advanced may be possible once we have our answer. Is that acceptable? Could you imagine if Dragon became like fucking David from Edge Runners? Just like shoe stop with cybernetics. Yeah, he's got the fucking Sandevistan
Don't
now.
worry, I'll hack them.
Gemini speed.
They put the hacking module in my brain.
Now I know how to do it. Again, Bruno's eyes
Open
flicked
command bar.
Again, Bruno's eyes flicked over to Ruth, who now had her cheek pressed against the window. Her dull gaze wasn't even aimed at the other ship anymore. He seemed to be waiting for her to say something, even prodding her with his elbow, but she remained silent. Eventually, he just went ahead and opened his mouth to answer for her. If only he got the chance. Before he could get the words out, the doors to the captain's office suddenly slid open, and a young cogitant man with fluffy black hair ran through, holding onto the door frame to catch his breath. As he did, raised voices and running feet could be heard from the hallway beyond. The widow raised an unimpressed eyebrow. "We're busy here," she snapped. "What is it?" The boy took one last deep breath before finally speaking. "It's Dragon Hadrian! He's gone!" Ooh. Popcorn. I'm tired.
No problem. Things progressed naturally from there. The widow went to find out where Dragon had gone. Bruno and Serena went with her. Ruth didn't know if they'd just forgotten she couldn't follow in a timely fashion, or if they decided she'd be safer here, but the end result was the same. She was left alone in the captain's office, looking out at the void of space. Full dark, no stars. It had been getting worse as Malay clinging to her bones. Did I say bones? Bones. As the day had gone.
That's Pugnant Bones.
Blown set.
Blown tower defense.
As the day had gone, even the slightest effort had become a great labour. Now, even keeping her eyes open was a pain. No, not a pain. It was the hole that pain left. Ruth let her eyes fall shut. It was a stupid comparison fit for a stupid girl, but she felt like a balloon being emptied of air. See you later, Ruth.
Is this fucking JoJo Death line? Ghost Dragon? He's like in the distance tipping his hat.
This year really was fun. Her eyes snapped open and she looked around for the source of the voice. There was nothing. She was utterly alone in the room. Even the sky outside was gone. Had she hallucinated that then, or had she really heard Dragon's voice? Had she been imagining things, or had she really seen that spark of blue? No answers came. All she could do was sit there and wait for a return that would not come. He existed only in part, for moments at a time. So that should be at a time. He allowed only the tip of a finger to emerge from his aether, enough to apply pressure on a button, enough to select an option on a screen. Everything else was unnecessary. He didn't need eyes or ears or even a brain. All he needed was his aether. All he needed was consciousness.
I think the brain and the consciousness go hand in hand.
Yeah, but once you've got aether, it gets fucky.
Oh, okay. That's interesting to know.
Even with all that, though, how long did Dragan Hadrian have? It's difficult to say. Exhaustion had conquered him once before, had left him in a state completely unfitting for such a journey. But fatigue was an opponent he knew now. It was something he could withstand. So long as no body existed to be tired, the only thing he had to do was keep thinking. He could do that, couldn't he?
It's just an Aether ghost now? What the fuck? Forever?
Tasks kept him pinned to the present. He needed to activate Gemini World. He needed to get through the hallways. He needed to say goodbye. He needed to pass into the shuttle bay. He needed to steal a shuttle. He needed to lock in coordinates. All of these were easy. All of these were physical phenomena accomplished by physical phenomena. He needed to wait. That was the hardest part of all. With the destination he needed to get to, it could take weeks to arrive, assuming he could make use of light points. Left alone for that time with no body, with only thoughts, concentration could waver, and then that would be it. But his thoughts did not go unaccompanied. He had one more task to consider, after all. One more physical phenomena to be accomplished by physical phenomena. Can you make this stick for me, kid? Can you make this stick for me, kid? Can you make this stick for me, kid? Yes, his mission. He ran through the words again and again, fixing them in his mind, fixing them in his soul, as the shuttle began its long journey to the planet Panacea.
I just realized, because he has Pan, because like Pan can do more than normal Panacea because she's sentient, right?
Yeah, she's like the core of it.
Could she fix him past his golden hours?
Who knows?
I mean, I think he knows. That's why he's going there, right? Unless he's trying to get Pan. I need you to be my strongest soldier against the supremacy.
Make me some reconstructed.
Turn me into Gene Tyrant. Oh, man.
Full lockdown! Jordan screamed as the vault door closed behind him. Activate all prison seals!
Us in Fortnite. When we trip the wire.
100 people dead in 60 seconds.
100?! Holy shit, it is Fortnite!
64 more in the next 3 minutes.
Oh, never mind.
Before this attack reached the 10-minute mark, Jordan honestly wasn't sure if anyone would be left alive on the Cheshire. Their attackers seemed intent on a full purge, and their strength was such that they couldn't be resisted. Jordan Hallicourt had survived this long by luck alone. When the attack had started, he'd just come off his shift on prisoner duty. He'd been stepping out the safety lock when he'd seen it. He'd been able to turn right around and retreat back into the prison. The memories of what he'd seen could not so easily be avoided. A litany of horrors. Tiny mechanical drones, the shape and size of pens, burning holes through the
Oh, this is fucking Dark Star, isn't it?
burning holes through the heads of guardsmen. Corpses warped into turrets of blood and bone, shredding through the victims with tooth bullets. Black tentacles lunging out the walls, seizing his comrades and crushing them into jam against the metal bulkheads. It wasn't as if the Cheshire prison guards were a helpless force. They boasted Aether users of considerable power who'd be able to put down assaults upon the Cheshire by terrorists in the past. Jordan harboured no hopes that they'd be able to do anything in this case, though. Any optimism had been snuffed out when he'd seen the strongest of their number impaled on the mighty greatsword of that thing, the Abyssal Knight.
It's Darkstar.
Oh no. Oh no.
Some know him as Samson Rhodes, back in the olden days.
Who? His sword and armour had been drenched in gore, purple light flaring from beneath his beneath the rusted metal. I don't want to say armour twice. His distended muscles squirming like serpents. The image of that monster remained so clear in Jordan's mind that he could imagine it standing behind him even now, breathing down his throat, waiting to devour him. Its agonised howl would echo in his nightmares if he survived long enough to have any. It wasn't looking good. The surviving guards were grouped in the observation chamber, sealed behind 7 layers of security, and behind it, the cell where the prisoner hung suspended above the engine by thousands of never-wired chains. Even one of those layers surpassed the most complex security measures available to the rest of the galaxy, and yet sweat coated the face of each and every guard as they pointed their guns at the closed vault door.
You know what's funny? Every time a villain or something in media puts in like a self-destruct button, I'm like, why'd you do that, moron? If knowing what's going on, I would have put a self-destruct button on the prisoner. So it just blows up.
The 30 or so men could not hear through the soundproof walls, but they could well imagine what was on the other side, the death that was waiting for them. "Where's the warden?" Jordan asked, voice shaking. Nobody answered, but under circumstances the answer was obvious. Dead. His direct subordinates were dead as well, which left them, the rank and file. Someone had to take charge. Jordan cleared his throat and spoke up again. "Have we sent word to the accompaniment fleet?" he barked, with all the authority he could replicate from his old drill sergeant. "Someone get the distress signal going!" One of the few surviving technicians looked up from their console, their face flooded with ghastly light by the screen. "We've tried," they whimpered, trembling violently. "But nothing's getting out. The whole system's down. A virus? But even so, we have measures for..." Jordan stopped listening after that and instead just took a deep breath. The gist of things was that they wouldn't be getting help. The 30 of them had to repel this attack on their own, and their enemy was obvious. Everyone knew what the Abyssal Knight meant. Darkstar. The most wicked group of killers in the galaxy. But...
How come What's-His-Face Supreme didn't give a shit about Darkstar?
Because they don't fucking poke their heads out. But... "We are the Supremacy," Jordan spoke aloud, "and this is the Shesha, the seat of our power. We're just going to let these freaks do as they please?" A moment of silence, nerve-wracking silence before... "Hell no!" came a collective cry with more confidence than was perhaps warranted. "Who are we?" Jordan roared. "The Supremacy!"
They're about to get wiped. It's about to be a TPK.
"This is nothing," Jordan declared, heart beating a jackhammer in his chest. "What is this?" No answer at first. Jordan's hands shook as he pointed his rifle at the waiting doors. If this group was able to hack the Shesha, the beating heart of the Supremacy fleet, to such a degree that it couldn't coordinate with other ships, that it was only a matter of time until the 7 seals were opened. It was no surprise the other soldiers weren't joining in. Bravado could only do so much, but even so, false courage was sometimes needed. Jordan might not have been good enough to become a special officer, but he understood some things perfectly well. Hope needed a vessel to point it forward.
Can I do the line in a bit?
Do you want popcorn from that point?
Yeah, sure.
And so he repeated, his roar bordering on a scream. "What is this?" "Nothing," replied a serene voice from behind him.
A hand landed on his shoulder.
Slowly, Jordan turned his head, knowing and dreading what he would find there. He was now alone in the observation chamber. No, that wasn't right. A man had stepped up behind him. A man with so little presence, it was easy to miss his existence entirely. The man this entire prison had been built around, who should have been suspended by never-wire chains above the main engine just on the other side of this chamber. The prisoner. His eyes narrowed as his lips spread into a calm and kind smile, but his pitch-black pupils went unchanged. What was going on? Jordan stared at the seemingly young man who was grasping his shoulder, too shocked even to tremble. The supremely reinforced glass that the prisoner should have been held behind had a massive hole melted through it. The rest of the guards were gone. Not even corpses remained. It was as if they'd just ceased to exist entirely. Jordan's mind raced. Was he going to die? He was going to die. He didn't want to die. Oh, why? The prisoner released his soft grip, instead patting Jordan on the shoulder reassuringly.
Are you sad?
He asked, his voice as calm and quiet as an ocean made still.
There's no need for that. Even though all your friends died, you alone were able to survive. You should be happy.
Jordan's mouth opened, Jordan's mouth closed, but no words came free. His eyes felt so heavy in their sockets that it felt as if they'd slipped free onto the floor. His gaze shifted to the prison cell beyond the melted window, and there he could see the countless never-wire chains that were meant to keep this man restrained. They hung limp, broken, gnarled, as if gnawed upon by thousands of tiny mouths. How? He finally managed to get out. How did you...
How did I get out?
The prisoner asked, cocking his head as he looked up at Jordan. He was slightly shorter.
I'm sorry, but that question is based on a false premise. It assumes that there was a point where I was in. I'd be happy to explain it to you further, but I don't think that will be possible.
His gaze shifted past Jordan to the vault door behind him.
After all, my friends will be here in mere moments. Thunk, 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 thunk.
As Jordan had expected, as Jordan had dreaded, 7 seals were overridden in just as many seconds. He watched, eyes wide, as the vault door slowly turned open. Beyond the opening, silhouetted by gore-soaked light, stood the people who had made the Shisha into their slaughterhouse. The ones who, Jordan realized with dull and tired fear, had surely killed everyone aboard but him. 5 people, Jordan realized looking at them. They'd done all of this with just 5 people, if all of them could even be called people. The massive head of an elderly man peeled itself away from a shadowy spot on the floor, swaying in the air from a long black tendril. Fear and hunger? It smiled a genial, wrinkled smile as it gazed upon the prisoner. Jordan just stared, mouth open, a strange creaking sound trickling involuntarily from his throat. He was looking at something incomprehensible, and his mind was feeling the weight of it like a fragile piece of wood. Oh, I can see the holder's influence. Before the horror masqueraded as a human, the prisoner lifted his hand in greeting.
Smith, he said, a note of cheer entering his voice. I'm so happy you made it. Your timing is impeccable as always. Have you been keeping healthy?
The entity named Smith broadened its smile, a blush creeping across its cheeks.
Oh, sir, it breathed. My form is as magnificent as the day you crafted it, as if it could ever develop a fault. Dark Star has awaited the return of its king for a long time. Such a long time, my liege.
As the prisoner stepped past Jordan's frozen form to address his rescuers directly, he chuckled lightly.
You're so earnest, Smith. It makes me so happy to see you again. That's McCoy with you, isn't it? Ah, what a reunion. What a truly auspicious occasion.
All these motherfuckers are at least 80, right? Given the timeline.
It would seem so.
The second person he'd addressed was a woman wearing a red fedora and trench coat, her entire body wrapped in stark white bandages. Carmen Sandiego? Even her face completely concealed. McCoy gave a curt nod to the prisoner. Boss. I hear they make videographs of your old adventures now, McCoy, the prisoner said.
Have you watched them? I hope they're interesting.
She snorted. That's a bad joke. The prisoner opened his mouth to say something else, but before he could get it out, he was interrupted. Jordan froze reflexively as an unprompted voice rang out through the observation chamber. This was not the sort of conversation to be interrupted. He understood the fear of it as the ant understood the boot. Haven't you used that one before?
Yeah, I like ants and boots.
It's a good metaphor. How about you take over, though?
Okay. The one who spoke was a girl with blue hair and blue eyes, a black beret perched atop her head. Cogitant, no doubt, but very young. She couldn't even have been out of her teens.
Not Noelle! No, Tan! Why'd she join Darkstar?
We knew this. This isn't new information.
How did I know this? When did this
She was
come
in
up?
the last arc.
Oh, man.
She showed up on the child garden.
Why is she so evil-pilled?
Because she's got that dog in her.
Loses one time. Joins Darkstar.
Ahem, she said, stepping forward. If you're done talking, we need to get out of here. My virus won't fool supremacy forever, you know. The prisoner stared at the young girl for a long moment, the smile still placid on his lips before replying. My apologies, Noelle. I was just so happy to see everyone once more, but you're absolutely right. Time is of the essence. This girl, this Noelle, blinked, and the confidence on her face faltered for a moment. How do you know my name? She asked quietly. As though Noelle had asked something absurd, the prisoner furrowed his brow. What do you mean? You're one of my beloved co-conspirators, Noelle. It's only natural that I'd know your name, isn't it? Noelle took a step back, and the young man standing behind her took a step forward, planting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He was dark-skinned, his grey hair tied back in a ponytail, a bandana pulled up to cover his mouth. The young man narrowed his golden eyes at the prisoner, but said nothing.
Ooh, pungent. Pungent-pilled.
For his part, the prisoner just scratched his cheek, his smile taking on a somewhat sheepish quality. Ah, please don't make such a frightening expression, Raynash.
No! Musashi's gay lover! He would never. He would never join Darkstar. He has too much honor.
I'm merely greeting my new friend. Of course, I appreciate your hard work as well, but you're not truly fighting for my sake, are you?
No, he would never. He's so honorable. Take it back. Rewrite the tome.
Raynash was existing to rewrite the Akashic records.
Raynash was supposed to be banished to gay fanfiction with Musashi, not this.
Raynash's expression hardened. What not being in the story for 2 years does to a motherfucker.
Puts you in Darkstar? Oh my god, it's been 2 years. Jesus Christ. Oh, we're old. Oh, I feel it. Oh my god.
Raynash's expression hardened, but still he said nothing. Eventually, the prisoner seemed to grow bored of waiting a response and turned to the final member of the party, the Abyssal Knight, looming tall like a misshapen statue behind the others. The thing grunted and groaned as the prisoner looked up and down.
I can't wait for the fucking novel version of Aetheral Space where every chapter has like a little side story image at the beginning, like fucking One Piece, that tells you where all the characters are doing.
Knight, the prisoner said coldly. We're leaving. Everyone else gets, how have you been? Hi. Let's fucking go.
Jordan, he's not a beloved co-conspirator. He's just a knight of Noelle.
You don't say hello to the dog.
Oh, what? They said hello to Santana.
Jordan's body was drenched in sweat. His eyes had been open for so long they were bloodshot. Saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth and pooled onto the floor. Every aspect of motion had been forcibly ceased by something beyond the conscious mind. Some animalistic instinct that knew the first sign of movement would mean his demise. Still, his mind raced to such a degree that his thoughts were feverish and indistinct, dancing lights inside his skull. He could recall carnival music from his youth, growing faster and faster, further and further away.
Go ahead, keep reading. I'm going to give you the carnival music.
They were leaving. They were going to go away. Was it really so? Jordan stayed there, still as a statue. First chapter of the fucking soundtrack. Daring not even to hope as the prisoner strode past him. In the minute or so that he'd been out of Jordan's sight, he'd acquired a pitch-black coat from somewhere, throwing it over his orange jumpsuit as he walked. His feet made not even a sound against the metal floor. A man who didn't exist. A man who didn't exist. The rest went with him. The tentacled thing, the Abyssal Knight, the bandaged woman, the young girl and her companion. Almost wrote her out of the story by accident. They all went to leave Jordan alone and depart the Cheshire. A sickly, vacant grin of relief began spreading across his face. He was going to make it. He was going to... Boss, grunted McCoy, glancing back into the observation chamber. What about this guy? The prisoner stopped. The prisoner turned his head to look at Jordan. The prisoner smiled a smile that lacked even a trace of benevolence. No, not a prisoner at all, not anymore. It was as the old man had said. That was the merciless dignity of a king. I'm so sorry, he said softly. I forgot about you.
Wait, is this him using his ability right now?
Jordan opened his mouth, and the one word he had left emerged from his throat as a hysterical scream. What anger mine you? Tartarian Aether dims the world.
What color is that?
That's...
I'm looking up Tartarian color. What is that? That's not a color.
It's
is it red?
It's pitch black.
Oh, I only got shades of red, so you might be wrong.
It's more like it's just like Tartarus. Basically, is the idea.
Tartarus color. Oh, okay.
A black sphere. No, darker than black. It wasn't even the absence of colour, it was the absence of existence. A hole in the world, the size of a soccer ball, hovering over the palm of the king's hand. The last thing Jordan Hallecourt saw. The last thing Jordan Hallecourt could bear to see. There was no time to dodge, no time to fight back, no time to even beg. All Jordan could do was register the existence of the void, and in that same moment, the king waved his hand twice, and Jordan Hallecourt ceased to exist. Well, said the king cheerfully, turning back to his fellows, shall we go then? There's a great deal that needs to be done. What do you mean? Noel asked, holding on to one of her arms or the other. Her eyes kept flicking between the scenes of carnage she'd left outside the cell and the absence let her win. What do we do next? The king smiled. The putrid light of false progress needs to be snuffed out, he said, in the same tone of voice one would use to discuss the weather. It's our duty to replace it with a dark star. We shall become the hammer that breaks the shape of this world.
Guys, place your bets now if he's going to be the nihilism point of view in the story.
The king continued strolling down the hallway, his monstrous companions following behind him. Our first order of business, his quiet voice sunk into the shadows, is to begin assembling our nails. Silence claimed the world that had been wiped of people. Darkness engulfed the man who did not exist. And after a moment, Noelle and her companion hurried to follow them. Aetheral Space, end of prologue.
Oda motherfuckers be like, 3 years in? That's the prologue. One Piece reading motherfucker. This is halfway through the story. You said it yourself, damn it.
In terms of the story structure, you can say.
Has Aetheral Space been expanded?
It's not been expanded. It's still going to be the same length, just in terms of story structure.
Oh my. Does that mean the rest of this is going to be like concrete plot, not as episodic?
I'll say yes.
Woo! I'm excited. Yeah, I definitely can see Darkstar is going to be like the nihilist to like Dragon's existentialist point of view. Oh man, this is exciting. I do have a question prepped, but it feels so lame compared to everything that's just happened.
Okay, what's your question?
I was just going to ask if there's ever been a Skirrent Supreme, and if so, who?
Yes, there was Damon the Devilish. He had like devil horns. He was the one who created the Quantum King ability.
Oh, he was the first tiefling.
Yeah, he was basically a tiefling, yeah.
That's kind of fun. All right. Well, thank you guys for frickin' watching. People are gonna go nuts over this one. Oh man, people are gonna go nuts.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh man, they're not ready. They're so not ready for what's coming. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye. Oh, I just want to say before we stop as well, there is going to be a little bit of a hiatus before Art 12 begins. I don't know why I'm going to say this in a bit. I'll probably say it in other places as well. I'm thinking like 2 weeks. So this is going to be posted on the 3rd. No. Yes.
That's so evil to everyone else waiting
Wednesday.
for the end of the arc.
No. What do you mean? They're still going to see the end of the arc.
Wait, what? You said this won't be posted until the 3rd.
No. Well, I'm just trying to remember when this one is going out, that we're doing that.
Oh, I see. 2 weeks from there. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So I posted 11.44 today.
And Patreons, I can't promise, it's only taking promises, but I suggested, let us know in the comments if you like this idea, that for the patrons in the hiatus, they should get some Tan MS Paint art, some exclusive Aetheral Space.
If you want it, you can ask for it, I guess. But yes, this one I think goes out next Wednesday, actually. So 2 weeks from then. So we will resume on the 21st. That's when Art 12 will begin.
Nice. Oh, I'm excited for it. That's fun.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed Arc 11 and the first half of Aetheral Space.
It was probably my favorite arc so far.
Thank you.
Like, I expected it to just be like an Avengers Endgame, but it was so much more, and it was so good. And I'm really excited. And I just think this story is so fucking good, and I want it to be more popular right now!
Thank you. So, yeah, I like... It is definitely like there is a bit of the Avengers Endgame to it, but I also like at the same. I like to be like a climax for everything we've done like in the first half of the story, and also like set up the next half as well, like set up starting points.
You know what? I'm tired of being coy about it. If you enjoy Aetheral Space, don't forget to check out the Patreon where you can get chapters ahead of time. And if you really enjoy Aetheral Space, don't forget to tell your friends about it on YouTube or
Tell them right
Road.
fucking now. Get on the phone.
Get on the phone. Call your local politician.
Call your
and be
boss.
Like, I won't vote for you if you don't read Aetheral Space. Tell them it's an important policy issue.
Well, thank you all for listening and reading, and however you've been experiencing Aetheral Space, I do always appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
if you
love
made
you
it this
guys.
far, you're allowed into the kingdom of heaven when you die,
Yeah.
regardless of sin.
You know
or
what?
Belief.
New World Order makes you happy.
Makes you happy, makes you happier.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys for watching. Bye.
Bye.